Hey there, let's go over this case of Tonja Burden versus the Church of Scientology of California et al. It was a case back in 79, 80, 81. It was from the Florida, District of Florida. And I'm going to read you a summary. It's the civil action number 80-501 T-K, United States District Court, Tampa. The plaintiff relied on various representations pertaining to the philosophy and nature of Scientology organization. Defendants promised plaintiff an education, a salaried position, comfortable living quarters, and that auditing benefits were scientifically guaranteed. Plaintiff alleges damages for breach of contract, fraud, emotional distress, conversion, false imprisonment, violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and RICO, the Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act. Tonja was subjected, which I don't know why these weren't in there also. Tonja was subjected to the R.P.F, a humiliating and degrading prison-type environment at the Fort Harrison, where she saw one person chained up, and others in various stages of mental and emotional deterioration. Tonja, from the age of 13 to 17, so we're talking about child abuse, child slavery, served as Hubbard's personal slave, decoding telexes for criminal operations, received no education, worked 80 hours a week without pay, escaped, was kidnapped, given a $60,000 freeloaders debt, subjected to fair game, and has had confidential information disclosed to the media. So that's a good summary. So we're looking at child abuse, child slavery, human trafficking, Fair Labors Act, RICO. Wow, there's just a lot of different crimes in this one. So I started doing some research because Tonja Burden was on the list of court cases that I had seen that was on that 3,000 plus list. And I was quite looking. So I looked for it under the Justia, under case law, and this is all I found. And in 1981, there was an amendment. Apparently, they went back and forth over some legal matters. L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue Hubbard hid, and only their lawyer was being present at trial. So the judge came in and ordered for the attorney to answer these questions. The defendants, L. Ron and Mary Sue Hubbard, each filed responses to the motion in June of 81. The motion concerns the questions asked of Clyde Wilson at deposition, who appeared as the attorney for L. Ron and Mary Sue Hubbard in the case in May 1980 to January 1981, so they never showed up for any of their cases. The plaintiff has been unable to locate the Hubbards to serve the complaint to date. So the questions were asked of Mr. Wilson. That kind of funny because of Mr. Wilson, but the judge ordered that these questions were legit and that he needed to answer them, and that he had July to do that. Here are the questions. Have you at any time known the Hubbards' whereabouts? Did you represent them under the Burden file? By whom were you retained? Digging a little deeper into the complexity of this. Were you compensated for representing the Hubbards? Assuming that you were compensated for representing the Hubbards, who made the payment? Where did the money come from? From whom did you receive these communications, i.e. during the course of your representation of the Hubbards in the burden file, communications which you received that you believed originated from the Hubbards. Did Mr. Park, there's a name we need to figure out who is, give you any instruction to render representation on behalf of Mr. or Mrs. Hubbard? Is there any individual that, to your information and belief, knows the whereabouts of Mr. and Mrs. Hubbard? So apparently they're on the run. Mr. Wilson, would it be a correct statement that you undertook the representation of two clients, Mary Sue Hubbard and L. Ron Hubbard, without knowing, number one, their location or address, or number three, anybody who could communicate with the clients? Is that a correct statement? So he was given till July 28th, 1981 to answer these questions. Herein lies the black demon hole of death for information. It goes on nowhere else. I can't find any other information. Well, then lo and behold, I find this. Now, this is a Los Angeles Times article, 1986. So that was 1981. This is all the way to 1986. So 5 years later. In a stinging legal defeat, and we'll go through this lawsuit at a different time, so I'm just going to kind of bumble through just a little bit of it. In a stinging legal defeat for the Church of Scientology of California, a judge refused Thursday to overturn a $30 million verdict against the church or to grant a new trial. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Ronald Swearinger affirmed the July 22nd jury verdict that awarded $25 million in punitive damages and $5 million in compensatory damages to former Scientologist Larry Willersham. Willersham claimed that the church destroyed his business and drove him to the brink of insanity. So as I said, we're going to go through all of that at another time because I do have him on the list of lawsuits that we need to look at. God dagnabbit, sorry about that. That's Mona's frustrated voice. So, and this is where we're going with this one because this is where it refers. In Tampa, Florida recently, it was disclosed that the Church of Scientology had reached out-of-court settlements in 4 multi-million-dollar civil suits. But the details of the settlements were ordered sealed by U.S. District Judge Elizabeth A. Kovacevic. The settlements were reached in suits filed by former Clearwater, Florida Mayor Gabe Cazares, who now is a Democratic candidate for Congress, Tonja C. Burden of Las Vegas, the one we were just reading, Nancy McLean of Ontario, Canada, and Marjorie Wakefield, whose address was not available. So it gives a little bit about the Tampa attorney Walt Logan, who represented plaintiffs in all 4 cases, said the files were sealed over our objections. And I bet you he made a pretty penny on all of these. All 4 cases, wow. The Cazareses sued the church for $1.5 million for invasion of privacy and malicious prosecuting them with a frivolous lawsuit that was thrown out of court. They contended that the Scientologists abused the legal process and subjected them to public humiliation, and that the attorney who represented them in the 1976 case that was dismissed was actually a Scientologist who funneled private information about them to the church. $45 million sought. Burden files suit in 1980 seeking more than $45 million. In one other article that I saw, it was only $3 million, so she obviously upped the ante quite a bit, alleging that the church, its founder L. Ron Hubbard, and his wife Mary Sue Hubbard, in the Clearwater headquarters of the church, had enslaved her for more than 4 years. She said the church promised to free her of her mental and emotional problems and enhance her intelligence. She sought damages for fraud, breach of contract, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. A federal jury in a non-binding abbreviated trial in March recommended that she receive $325,000 in damages. Quite a big difference between $45 million and $325,000 in damages. So the McLean sued in 1981, also alleging invasion of privacy and malicious prosecution, as in the Cazares' case. A slander filed by the church was dismissed as frivolous. Jury recommendation, $775,000. Wakefield suit in 1982, claiming that the church fraudulently promised to cure her mental illness and instead mentally abused her. So more abuse. The amount of money sought was not available. They're all real happy about it. Miss Burden is satisfied with the settlement, saying, "I wish I could tell you more." Scientology attorney Paul Johnson of Tampa said in a prepared statement Friday, all existing litigation between the church and the people involved in the 4 suits have been amicably settled. This settlement marks the resolution of all former disputes between the parties concerned and establishes a clean slate among us. There will be no further statement from the Church of Scientology. Well, I bet not, because look how much money they saved. Not going to trial and not for the whole amounts. Now, the problem here, as I see it, is in this Tonja Burden case, she was 13 to 17 years old. She was a child. She was yet still a baby. Not even a woman, or just becoming a woman. Wow. I would surmise that even 5 years later, so she would be in her early 20s, she still didn't fully comprehend what she was doing when she settled. And the money was nice, but she wouldn't know. I would ask that if anybody knows Tonja Burden or what happened of her, please get a hold of me so we can do a follow-up on this one. Thank you, and I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.